So back to item number 9. Did you want to handle that one with a motion?
Yeah, I have a motion.
Okay. Item 9 is R277-700, elementary and secondary school general core. And we have a motion that the board accepts the hearing record as presented. Any discussion of that motion? If not, board members, please vote. I just made it.
I mean, in light of who's present, can you just start bringing up rules that involve charter schools? Like, I'm just asking, but is that?
Well, apparently, the charter schools are the ones that are on time and follow instructions.
Yeah, so I'm just saying.
We're all in the same boat.
That's- All right, do we have that teed up for vote? Okay. We are up. Okay.
Member Green?
Member Green?
No.
Member Green's a no. Okay, this is to accept the voting record. And let's see, anybody else wish to vote? We are voting to accept the hearing record on, yes,
We're just accepting the documentation
record.
that the meeting occurred
Yeah.
correct.
and the information contained in the meeting minutes.
Yep.
Yeah.
So with
I'm
11
sorry, I was
voting,
discussing.
Member Green?
For me.
Oh, change it to a yes? Change your.
Member Green is a yes. Okay, we've got 11 having voted. The voting is unanimous. That motion passes. Next motion is that the board selects one of the options outlined. And I will read these and then open the floor to motions. That the board directs staff to file an effective date for R277-700 with the OAR. That the board holds R277-700. That the board amends to R277-700 as follows, and request staff to refile R277-700 with OAR, or that the board refers R277-700 back to committee for further review and consideration. Floor is open. Member Earl has a motion.
I have a motion that we accept number 3 for amendments and that we do, if you can put mine up there, my motion. And I will read it. So it's if a student refrains from a portion of a course or to a course in its entirety under section 53G 10205, the parent and school may work together to establish an alternate academic accommodation which allows the student to demonstrate mastery of course standards or alternate standard. Consistent with 53G 68037 and subsection 53G 10205 2B. And that's strike the rest of that.
Okay, do we have a second? It's been seconded. Member Klein seconded? No, who was the second? By Member Reel. Okay, back to you, Member Earl.
Yeah, and I just, let me just speak to this. So we have the words in there, alternate instead of reasonable. That seemed to bring up some questions as to whether there were some nuances to that. So alternate was included as an alternate academic accommodation and then also as an alternate standard that schools, the main thing is that the school and the parent encouraging them to work together. But in the end, that you got your 53G 803-7 and your 53G 205-2B that creates the framework for that to be worked within. So.
All right, discussion of that motion. Let me just see which order we have. Member Klein.
I have a
Member Klein.
substitute motion. I motion to, my motion would be a student, to amend 53, or R27750, sorry, I'm getting my numbers mixed up. R277-700, section 7, subsection 4. To read a student or parent may refrain from participation consistent with section 53G 10205.
See if we get that.
student or parent may refrain from participation consistent with Section 53G 10205. (53G 10205).
Does that say it accurately?
Yes.
Okay, did we have a second on that?
I would second that.
Member Bogus seconds, and we can come back to you, maker of the motion. Do you want to address the motion?
Yes, I have some prepared comments that, if you'll indulge me. There are only two categories. If you look at the actual amendment as it was passed the other month, there are only two categories that R277 amendment that this board passed can fall into. It's either optional legal guidance or a constitutional issue. It's either an optional legal guidance on a constitutional issue or it is a requirement, optional or requirement. If it is legal guidance, then our board's legal policy advisor already set the precedent for this board's authority to provide that guidance, which is we don't have that authority or expertise. The quote directly from our legal advisors in the record is that administrative rules are not designed to provide legal guidance. That's a direct quote. The board repealed its previous rule, R277-105, entitled Recognizing Constitutional Freedoms in Schools, because it was guidance on constitutional rights. So if this rule falls into the category of providing guidance on a constitutional issue, we simply don't have that authority. And if not just guidance, then the only other category that R277-700 amendment can fall into is that it is a requirement. Administrative rule has the effect of law, and the language may in Utah law means an action is authorized. It's a permission. May. It's not, meaning the district can authorize it, meaning it's not optional. So R277-700's wording, that particular portion grants the school the authority to, quote, establish a reasonable academic accommodation, which allows demonstration of mastery of core standards consistent. So that's the part that it is allowing the districts to make that decision. It's granting authority to districts to authorize that schools and parents work together to establish reasonable academic accommodation, which allows the mastery of core standards. But the way it was passed, it said that it would be consistent with 53G 6803 of the code, instead of what the law 53G 10205 requires it to be consistent with itself, 53G 10205. So if you look at what the phrase reasonable accommodation means for all of Section 800, which gives the definitions for all of the 800 section of code, 53G 6803 included, where it defines reasonable accommodation, it's not pretty. In order to allow a religious belief or right of conscience to be accommodated, it means an LEA, the definition directly from the code says reasonable accommodation means an LEA shall make its best effort to enable a parent to exercise a parental right specified in Section 53G 6803, A, without substantial impact to staff and resources, including employee working conditions, safety, and supervision on school premises and for school activities, and efficient allocation of expenditures, and B, while balancing the rights of parents, the educational needs of other students, the academic and behavioral impacts to a classroom, a teacher's workload, and the assurance of the safe and efficient operation of a school. Okay, so it has to meet 14 different criteria before the district has to make an accommodation, has to meet all of those. It's an and. Basically, R277 says a school need only accommodate a student's or a student's parent's conscience and religious belief if those 14 different conditions are all met. There isn't a single claim of religious belief or conscience that couldn't be overridden by the state thanks to this provision in Parental Rights Code, ironically. It excessively burdens a student's constitutionally guaranteed rights of conscience and religious belief. It would not pass the strict scrutiny test, which means it has to be done with the least restrictive means. It wouldn't pass it in the slightest, and it puts us in direct conflict with 53G 10205, which orders the board to make our rules consistent with 53G 10205, not with other sections of the code that we are currently out of line with now since the passing of that amendment. This requirement of this rule, the requirement of this rule is simply not consistent with the law itself, and it's also not consistent with the Constitution that says the rights of conscience shall never be infringed. The bottom line is that the board should avoid stepping in this minefield completely. We can simply refer the schools back to 53G 10205 and let the schools address student and parent rights of conscience and religious belief instances on a case-by-case basis according to the law as it is written. Draft 1 that the staff put forward did this perfectly. As our own legal policy advisors here at USBE, in consultation with our Attorney General, said, quote, "It's really not something that's the board's authority to create these requirements," end quote. We need to show the legislature and the families we represent that we are following the law and upholding the Constitution we took an oath to support, defend, and obey. Not to mention that going against or saying that the school can require a student to violate their conscience or religious belief in order to fulfill a core standard that's required for graduation is just a bad look.
Thank you, Member Klein. Other discussion to the motion? Member, let's see, what's our
I got Hymas.
member?
I don't know who's next.
I've got Member Bogus, then Davis, then Hymas, I think.
Do you want to hand me that and I'll run it?
Sorry. Member, sorry, where did I go? Bogus?
August.
Yes, there you go.
So when I cogitate on this, I have two positions that are juxtaposed and they never reconcile. And I think they don't reconcile because freedom is that messy. And one is that I have reached out to liberty groups and attorneys all over the nation, and I think the board is stepping into a minefield if we pass anything that doesn't say consistent with section 53G-10-205. That was the language that our staff originally put forward. It was something to that end. And so I think it's important that we stay out of that legal minefield. But I do think, having said that, I do think we have a job to do in this room, because when our schools are so tenuous that kids don't want to participate, or that parents are pulling their children from an entire course of required study, we have a system that's gone rogue. And I wonder if we've created a system in service to the public that does not meet our public standards. I have often thought about the terminology or the phrase that, you know, this is what's in the public school system, and if you disagree with 86% of it, then by all means choose a different school. But this is a public system funded by public dollars for the benefit of the public. And if we have individuals that have conscience issues with the system that we've designed and created, I think we have work to do. With that, I would support this motion because I've done the research and I would like not to be in that hot seat when it comes, and I do believe it will come. I just believe that we're staring down the barrel of some bird shot that's going to go everywhere. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Member Bogus. Member Hymas.
Thank you. I don't see this motion doing anything different than what's in the other motion. Students and parents, of course, they have the right to refrain. What we're trying to, what I'm seeing in these other motions is now the school, instead of just saying, yeah, you don't want to do it, don't do it. And then what? Do you receive a grade for that? Do you receive nothing at all? What are you? Is it simply excused? There's more happening here than just a student refraining, because I can refrain from anything. I could have refrained from coming here today. There's going to be consequences, right? But it's my right to not be here. It's my right to do other different things. So to just leave this here, a student or parent may refrain from participation consistent with Section 53G. Absolutely. Absolutely, we support that. It's actually in the amendment that what came out of committee. It's in the amendment that Vice Chair Earl has put forth. This verbiage is in there. A student or parent may refrain. And then we have to then discuss and say, okay, how can the school help that individual fulfill other requirements that have been put upon us by the legislature, right? So how do we do that? So we're asking schools and families to work together. And for some reason, that seems to upset some people, where we're saying we're trying to create this spirit of unification, of working together. You don't believe in that? That's fine. But let's do something, whatever that is. So this, I don't feel is complete. I feel like it's in there already. I'd speak against this motion and speak in favor of what Member Earl, Vice Chair Earl, has put forward, because this is, in my opinion, incomplete.
Thank you. And could we just scroll up a little bit on the screen so we can see both motions while we're talking? Thank you. That's, whoa. Nope, just so we get Vice Chair Earl's and Member Klein's, and then if possible to blow that up slightly if we just have the two in front of us. Oh, no, okay, you're right. That we got the top part that would be cut off. Never mind. Okay. All right, Member Klein.
It's on.
You got it.
Okay.
You're live.
So the code says the school may offer an alternative. So I'm glad we took out reasonable, since that has a distinct definition in code. And again, I'm going back to your motion, to Board Member Earl's motion, but it still requires, so it's mastery of a core standard or alternate standard. I don't know what an alternate standard is if it's not a core standard. All of the standards are core standards. In reading through the code and our rules, whatever standards we have are considered core standards. So there really isn't such a thing as alternate standard. And again, this makes it consistent with 53G 6803 instead of 53G 10205, which the code requires it to be consistent with. You can't make it consistent with both because they're in conflict. And so the code requires that it be our rules be consistent with 53G 10205. So you can't have both. That just doesn't work. And again, this is it should be a case by case basis, because you're dealing with exceptions here, right? If you have whole classes that have a problem, then the teacher or the curriculum should be addressed, right? Or our standards that they're aligning their curriculum with should be addressed. But for the unique situation where you have an individual, if there is not a way for the school to, if there's not an alternate that can be given, and that's allowed in the code for an alternate to be offered, it's not required, but if it is offered, which this makes it more of a shall, like this, the school may work together with the parent to establish. Well, may is, again, authorizing the district to establish or require the parent to work with them. It's not a you can or can't. It gives them permission to require it. And establish means that you have to come up with an accommodation, which isn't what the code said. The code says they may offer an accommodation or an alternate. But if they do, that alternate also may not violate conscience. So in the rare case that a student really can't, that an alternate can't be come up with that satisfies the student's objections, then that student, the code says, should not be penalized or discriminated against. And if they make a frivolous claim just to get out of an assignment, the school has to make a judgment. And if the school decides, yeah, that doesn't make any sense, that's not conscience, you just don't want to do the assignment, well, then let it play out. And if the parent's not a check on the child, like the code requires that the school contact the parent, so the parent can be that first check on Johnny if he's just trying to get out of stuff. But if there is a legitimate conscience objection, the school needs to err on the side of allowing or honoring that conscience objection, because regardless of what our code says, our code has to align. It can't go against what's in the Constitution, which is the rights of conscience shall never be infringed, and never means never. And so we can offer, the schools may offer an alternative, but that alternative also may not violate conscience. And if it doesn't say that,
Okay, thank you. Member
it
Davis.
doesn't say that, it leaves it out.
Member Davis. Member Davis.
Oh, I agree with all those things, but I think Member Earl's amendment does those things, and it is aligned with code. It is aligned with the codes that were mentioned. So but I am kind of confused, because are we speaking on Member Earl's amendment, or are we speaking on Member Klein's amendment? Because we've been here for 15 minutes, and I feel like somewhere in the middle we switched. And I need to know, do I put my light on to speak to this one now, or are we still doing Member Klein's?
We're on Member Klein's.
Okay.
So you can speak to that one
Okay,
or hold.
No, I'll hold to speak to the other one when we officially do.
Okay. Any other comment or questions? I will just briefly say I think the same thing, that the right of conscience in religion must be protected. I think the proposed amendment does not explain what to do when a person refrains. And I think it's important that they understand that you offer an alternative that does not violate their conscience, as stated in 205. I know I'm mixing the two, but that's my reason for voting against this one, because I think the top one gives specificity on how to give an alternative that still protects the right of conscience. So I'm a no on this one for that reason, and I think we're set to vote. The motion then on the floor is that the board amend 277-700-74 to read, a student or parent may refrain from participation consistent with section 53G-10 205. Board members, please vote.
Green is a yes.
Green's a yes. Thank you. Okay, voting is complete. That motion fails by a vote of 12-3. The yes votes being Green, members Green, Bogus, and Klein. Back to the underlying motion of Board Member Earl. Discussion of that motion, Member Bogus.
Yes, sir, I would move to amend the motion.
Okay.
I would like to, where it is in red, Director Rasmussen, if you're running that, where it's red and it says or alternate standard, I would like to put a period there and strike the remaining language. And with a second, I would like to speak to the motion, sir.
Okay. All right.
It's all
Do we
right
have
there.
it framed up correctly? We do have a second. Just want to make sure we got it teed up.
I do believe that's correct. So it would strike all language after the word alternate standard.
Okay.
Is that, so it would strike, yeah, it would strike that language. Thank you. I'm sorry, I did not see the language down below. I know we have 2 people working. Thank you guys for your efforts. So just for clarity,
We did get a second. Yes, yes.
Yes.
Member carried. Okay.
I think I've said my piece. I do believe that if we try to entangle this code with any other code, we are setting ourselves up for litigation that is something I'm not comfortable with, and I'm not comfortable messing with the Constitution. However, I am comfortable. A gentleman named Aaron Bullen spoke before this board, and he gave an excellent example of what could possibly be entertained in the realm of climate change. There's always an alternate, in my opinion. We teach core standards through different mediums, through different genres, through different elements. And I do think that there is a way to do this. And I think that liberty-minded educators are going to rise up and do what's right by kids of all faiths, by parents. And if they don't, then I think that's something that this board will have to deal with. But I would like to refrain from entangling this amendment with another piece of code. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Member Bogus. Member Klein. And then Member Davis.
I would speak in favor of this amendment, or what's been stricken out, as it makes it only partially consistent with 53G 10205 by adding 2B to it, and adding 53G 6803 brings in muddies the water incredibly, because that section is not the same or isn't consistent with 53G 10205. So I appreciate that part's been taken out.
Okay, thank you, Member Davis.
I don't think it's possible to entangle codes. They are sort of already coexist within code. So we already have responsibility to implement. But even if you want 205 to be the primary, this certainly lends itself to that, because it basically gives the same language. It changed the may to a shall. It used the word alternate instead of reasonable, which some of our public hearing members said. And I appreciate Chair to Mr. Member Bogus's point about some of the suggestions made by Mr. Bullen. In fact, I heard that Member Earl was working on a motion and asked her if she would include something that he had talked about, which was also an opportunity to give an alternate standard. Now, with this may, the school can do just what it says in 205, which is nothing. It can give an alternate that does not conflict with the student's right of conscience. So, I think that this is consistent primarily with 205.
Thank you, Member Davis. Vice Chair Earl. Yeah.
When you say this is consistent, do you mean Member Bogus's motion, or do you mean Member Earl's motion?
A Member Earl's motion. Sorry, so I would
Okay.
speak against removing the codes because
right.
they do coexist. But I just wanted to point out that I still believe this language is primarily, it is 205, basically.
Thank you. That's
So
Vice Chair Earl.
Yeah, let me just create some clarification. We removed reasonable because there's some questionability with that. So alternate is the language from the law. The two codes that were listed, let's be clear what those are and what those are not. We're trying to create clarity for our districts. That's what we're trying to create because there is some ambiguous discussion there. So if you go to 7, what is it? 53G 6803 7, it does not refer to reasonable academic accommodation there, which there seem to be some concerns with that, and understandable, there's some components to that. But it says consistent with, and then it gives the code, and that has to do with graduation, which requires the state board to establish graduation requirements that use competency-based standards and assessments, as an LEA shall allow a student to earn course credit toward high school graduation without completing a course in school by, and then it gives 2 reasons why. The reason why this is listed here is so it shows in the rule exactly where they could get that competency-based, whether they test out of the course or demonstrate competency in course standards, of which, if we're adding in here, allows that standard flexibility. So it does, it's very consistent. In putting that in there, we aren't jeopardizing anyone's right of conscience. And then also, if you go to the other piece here, which remember, this has to do with courses and course standards. It says, the B says, may offer an alternative that does not violate the student's or the student's parents' religious belief or right of conscience. The point of putting it there is to make sure that there's a clear understanding. Do not cross this line. I don't think there's anyone here that wants to violate someone's religious belief or right of conscience, despite the fact it's been articulated otherwise. That's not the case. Do we want to get the language right so it's clear for our districts? Absolutely. Our districts want to know where to go with this. They don't want to leaving the law just the way it is, says you may. This allows that flexibility and that exactness that needs to exist. And so I would encourage us to leave the language in there. The language is not restrictive or constitutional violation. And it's already there anyways. We're just saying if you're doing courses with standards, here's the flexibility, here's the code that associates with it, and it allows some clarity for our districts. So.
Okay, Member Klein and Member Bogus.
Okay, so I'm just listening, and 2B is not the only provision in the law that it needs to be consistent with. It needs to be consistent with the entirety of 53G 10205.
Oh, sorry. Click it again.
Also, there is a hierarchy of, there was comments about all the code works together and, there are different sections of the code, but the Constitution trumps. And that says the rights of conscience shall never be infringed. And so whatever provisions are in the code, if they don't allow for the rights of conscience to be held higher than, then it becomes a problem. I would move to amend Member Bogus's motion to also take out accommodation and well, I have to be able to see what I'm looking above. Thank you. So it would say an alternate academic, an how did I say that? An academic alternative instead of alternate academic accommodation. So an academic alternative. As opposed to alternate standard? So that it's consistent with 205. We say that a parent may, in fact, we'll just amend from that second line where it says the parent may work with the school or the school may offer. So just, I would just take out the parent and just say the school may offer an academic alternative. the school may offer an academic alternative. It would just be the school may offer an academic alternative. Consistent with 53G 10-205. Mm-hmm. To I'm still going.
Well, your academic alternative can't really be consistent with 205.
I think that's discussion of the motion. Let's frame it up, and then we
Okay.
can turn to discussing the language. If we get a second, let's let Member Klein frame it up.
Okay, so it says the student refrains from a portion of a course or to a course in its entirety under, and yeah, I think that that's not going to necessarily happen, but they would refrain from the entirety of a course. But so I don't really like that wording. In fact, I would take that out and put, if a student refrains from an aspect of school, because that's what the code says. Refrains from an aspect of school. Someone typing? If the student refrains from an aspect of school, the school may offer an academic alternative consistent with 53G 10-205 in an attempt to honor the student's religious belief or right of conscience. And then if an alternative cannot be found, that satisfies the student and the parent, then the school may not penalize or discriminate the student for refraining. And that would be it.
All right, let's see.
Is there a second?
We got it? Everything look right? Okay, is there a second? Hearing no second, that fails. Back to the floor. Any other discussion? Member Straight? Yes, so we're back to Member Earls.
Well, the amended,
Sorry, we did have an amendment.
well, it's striking that.
That the board strike the language after alternate standard from the motion. Okay. Member Straight? Yes, yeah, you are.
Could
Okay,
I-
you got Member Bogus, then Member Straight.
Could I please query a member of the staff with regard to the code line listed 53G-6-803-7?
Absolutely.
I do
What's
believe
the
it may be
query?
Superintendent Stallings or Director Rasmussen. I can either ask the question and they can choose, or I don't care how you do it, sir.
Go ahead, just pose it and yeah, we'll see who takes it.
Okay, Superintendent Stallings, if you guys have that code pulled up, it has two line items there. It says, consistent with section 53E-4-204, which requires the state board to establish graduation requirements that use competency-based standards and assessments, an LEA shall allow a student to earn course credit toward high school graduation without completing a course of school by A, testing out of a course, or B, demonstrating competency in course standards. And my question would be, how do you test out of a course and get a qualifying score on that course if you are fundamentally opposed to the content of that course or disagree with it as objective fact? And then in B, how do you demonstrate competency in something that you have not learned because you're fundamentally opposed of exposing yourself to it or engaging in it? Is that the question I wanted to ask?
It's a pretty good question.
Okay.
Chair, thank you. I will give my answer and then I will defer to anyone else. I would have to research that, honestly. I can't answer, or I don't have an opinion or expertise to provide on that. Anyone else?
Well, and may I, sir?
Okay, sure.
I just appreciate your honesty, Superintendent Stallings. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else comment? Member Davis, I think, might be responding. We have Member Straight with a separate comment, but if you're responding to this one, we'll.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I
Squeeze you
mean,
in
if
there.
I understand correctly, it's an or, so you don't have to take the test to demonstrate the competency in the test. And there is a provision elsewhere, if there's a problem with the course, you still have to earn 24 credits, but you can work with the counselor on the CCR to have an alternate course for credits. So you still earn 24 credits to graduate, but it would be an alternate if the whole course is against your right of conscience. And then this would build in kind of what Aaron was talking about, that more sensical steps. So maybe you just have a concern with an assignment or one standard. This would be the aspect of school that comes out in 205. You should be allowed to take that course and just have an alternate that doesn't violate your right of conscience for that one standard or two, and not have to take a whole nother course. I mean, I think this gives our parents and students, again, better options. The schools, we can't do a shall because it's not in code, but we can certainly do a may, and it gives them some better options.
Sure.
I query the commenter.
Sure.
Member Davis, I have great consternation. I love that word, about how, as an educator or how as a counselor, when the code expressly states that someone does not have to explain, in particular that word, their objection. I understand not having to defend. I understand the other language, but that word explain. How do I, as an educator, offer anything as an alternative if I don't understand the objection itself?
Yes.
That probably would be a good question for the bill sponsor, because they have put in there that the school may offer an alternate. So I can't necessarily get in their heads, but I can say this would be a little more helpful because the school and the parent are, having a conversation about what do you think would be good for your child to earn this credit? Well, what do you think would work for this student? I used to do that even just on discipline issues. If I had a student that needed a discipline in an elementary school, for heaven's sakes, I call the parent in. I say, you know your child the best. How can we turn this ship around? What would be best? I'm not going to push my thing down everybody's throat. And I really valued what the parents thought. And I think this amendment allows for that.
Member Straight? Sorry.
Yes.
I'm ready to go. Okay, so I already told you about Christmas trees. I've already talked about that. Anyway,
Relevant?
Go for
it
it.
is relevant.
Bring
it is
it.
relevant.
Bring it.
So we used to go up every the Saturday after Thanksgiving, and we cut down a Christmas tree. Invariably, I like that word, invariably, we would look at lots of trees. And oftentimes, we would come back to the first tree we looked at. And that's how I'm feeling about where we're headed here. As I listen to the descriptions of what board members would like to see by putting forth these amendments, where it kept taking me back is to the First Amendment by Vice Chair Earl. So I'm ready to move past things. I think it accomplishes everything we want. My experience in education is that we do everything to find all sorts of routes to success for students. And, you know, if there's a right of conscience, if there's an issue, educators bend over backwards to try and make that be successful. So let's get back to that First Amendment. I'm going to call previous question.
So the motion before the body is member Bogus's motion to amend, right? That the motion board strike the language after alternate standard. Sorry?
Call the previous question.
Right. So I'm just articulating what we're calling the previous question on. Yeah. Sorry. I did sound like I was going off into the curb there. Just trying to frame up what's being called. The question that's being called is member Bogus's motion. So it's not debatable. Motion's been called. We are voting on whether to move straight to a vote. Requires 10 votes to call the question, correct? I always want to make sure I'm not, okay.
To clarify, this would be straight to a vote on Bogus.
Correct, yes, that's what we're doing. So, that's before the body. Please vote.
Can you ask Green?
Member Green?
Green is yes.
Green is yes, thank you.
She was a yes, right?
Yeah, member Green was a yes. That doesn't actually work, to just say it into the universe.
What's that?
I said that doesn't actually work, just to announce it.
Oh. What is that called? What is that called when you announce your intentions?
I don't know. All right, that's unanimous.
I think it's right.
Motion passes. The question's been called. We now vote on the but the motion by member Bogus, which was to amend that the board strike the language after alternate standard from the motion. Board members, please vote.
Green is a yes.
Whoa, hold on. Let's
to strike.
hold on. That the board's, yeah, correct me. Okay, did the board strike the language after alternate standard from the motion? Is that off? That's correct. Okay, sorry if I stated it wrong. All right, we've got it right. So that's the motion. Let's vote. Member Green?
Yes.
Member Green's a yes. Did I? Yep. All right, voting is closed. That motion fails by 12-3. The yes votes are members Green, Hymas, and Bogus. Okay, back then to the underlying member Earl motion. Any further discussion to that motion? I was going to make one comment. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, member Klein first. Member Klein and Bogus. There you go. Anybody who's not made comments? We have member Reel teed up. Member Klein.
What is the difference between a core standard and an alternate standard? They're all like all the standards are required. So can an educator make up their own standard? Is that what we're saying? I mean, I think Member Earl said there's flexibility in the standards, which I didn't realize there was flexibility in the standards. Is that true?
Sounds like we might turn to Deputy Norman for that. Is that all right? Thank you. Got her? She needs a hot mic. There we go.
Deputy Superintendent Patty Norman. There is a question on this that we've been discussing and looking up back here, which is alternative standards actually apply to special education. There are the special education alternative standards, and so that term is being used specifically for special education at this time.
So there's no such thing as an alternate standard for the general ed students. So it's either core standards or they don't fulfill this standard if the standard itself is what they object to.
Deputy
does
Norman,
that work?
did you want to address that? Sorry, I'm interpreting body language. Did you want to address that, or should we go to a board member comment?
You can go, yeah.
Okay. I'd love to hear any response, but let's see who we have set up. Member Reel.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm sure it's no surprise to anyone that I wasn't a huge fan of House Bill 348. And through this process, I know it's taken a long time to find a way to make sure that the parents and the schools are working together in a way that will support the students' academic excellence and their learning, while also giving them the freedom and liberty to opt out of whatever they feel is necessary based on their right of conscience. So I'd like to call the question on Member Earl's motion.
That is not debatable. So, question's been called. That would bring us directly to a vote on Member Earl's motion, which is framed up on the board. Requires 10 votes. Please go ahead and vote. Again, the question is the previous question on whether to move directly to a vote on Member Earl's motion. Requires 2/3 vote.
Yes.
Member Green's a yes. Got it. You've got one more we need. Who hasn't voted? Anybody? Oh. Well, I know, but we usually, did you want to vote, Member Davis? I'm not calling you out, just asking if you'd like to. Okay. So this passes by 11-4, the previous question. The noes being Bogus, Moss, Klein, and Carey. So we now proceed to a vote on Member Earl's amendment, which is that the board amend the rule as follows and refile it with the OAR. If a student refrains from a portion of a course or to a course in its entirety under section 53G 10205, the parent and school may work together to establish an alternate academic accommodation, which allows the student to demonstrate mastery of core standards or alternate standard consistent with section 53G-6-8037 and subsection 53G-10-2052B. That is the motion. Board members, please vote.
Green is a no.
Green, no. Thank you. Huh? Oh, yeah, for voting. Okay, we've got a motion, we got a vote going on. Okay, let's see, 2 more votes. Did you vote? You voted by, okay, there we go. We have it there. Motion passes 12-3, the no votes being members Klein, Bogus, and Green. Let's see. All right, that completes, I believe, correct? Do we have another vote, or does that wrap it up? That takes us back